Heather, for that. Let's bring in Jonathan Panikoff. He is a former U.S. intelligence officer, currently the director of the Atlantic Council's Middle East program. Jonathan, wonderful to have you back. Your thoughts on what we're seeing today?
Thanks so much for having me. Look, I think you're seeing exactly what Israel and even the U.S. have been quite nervous about for a while, that if the war ended suddenly without clear governance established and without a clear security force to oppose the remnants of Hamas, that you would see a power vacuum. And we're seeing that Hamas is quickly trying to fill it. And it's why it's so incumbent that Arab states, Israel, the U.S., Europeans agree and move quickly on the questions of phase two related to disarmament, related to governance, related to an international stabilization force.
I wonder whether you think it's realistic to imagine a scenario in which Hamas would actually give up its weapons and ask for amnesty or agree to be exiled out of the region.
No, I don't, unfortunately. I think that would certainly be a positive thing, both for the region, for the people of Gaza, for Israel. But there's nothing in Hamas's history that would give any indication that it would be willing to undertake that type of voluntary disarmament. And so what that means is an international stabilization force is going to actually have to be willing to engage and compete with Hamas. It means that you could actually see bloodshed. And so there's a question of, will Arab forces and Arab states be willing to pony up forces to actually engage in that type of mission, not a mission that's a monitoring one, for instance, that we saw for years on the border of Israel and Lebanon or Syria and Israel, but one in which you see actual engagement, more like what we saw in the Balkans years ago and in Kosovo.
Will the Israeli military agree, Jonathan, to pull out of Gaza entirely?
I think it depends whether or not you get some sort of interim force to go in and provide the security that Israel is looking for. Until that actually happens and until it's clear that you have a stabilization force, an external force that actually is willing and can provide the security Israel says that it needs, and that's needed, frankly, for humanitarian distribution, for eventually for reconstruction, for the space for a new Gazan governance to open and be actively running things in Gaza in a technocratic way, then no, I think you will not see Israel fully withdraw. But of course, that's part of the negotiations and part of the goal to try to create those benchmarks.
You know, this peace plan put forward by President Trump has been a little vague on some of the details. Perhaps that is intentional here because, of course, there will be a negotiation. Do we have any kind of timeline, though, as to when we might see phase two, when some of these next steps may actually happen?
Not immediately. Steve Witkoff, the president's representative to the region, has said that negotiations on phase two had already begun, that they began, frankly, as soon as phase one was signed. But we don't have a good sense yet of what that actual timeline is going to really look like. I think the president was right in that reality was Israelis were exhausted. The hostages had been held for 2 years. Gaza had frankly been destroyed, as we all know. There just needed to be a ceasefire. And so agreeing to phase one only without clarity of what came next, I think made sense. But the question of whether we go from a ceasefire that's temporary to an actual longer-term calm or even a peace, as the president had said, is going to depend on the answers to phase two and how it's developed.
You mentioned Gaza destroyed, rightly so, and, you know, upwards of 67,000 people killed as a result of this conflict. What is the rebuilding going to look like, Jonathan?
I think before you even get to rebuilding, the best humanitarian experts tell us that it's going to be, frankly, just 2 years of needing to get aid in, needing to get medical supplies, of rebuilding hospitals, of rebuilding critical infrastructure, and at the same time, in parallel, actually clearing the rubble, which means real reconstruction may be still, frankly, anywhere from 18 to 24 months from even beginning in Gaza. And then from there, it's going to take years. And there's obviously big questions that are part of these negotiations as well. Who is going to pay for it? The U.S., and I think a lot of Western default view is that it's going to be the Gulf states. But I have to tell you, a lot of the Gulf states are very, very concerned and very, very frustrated that they're on the hook for something that they don't think they can actually afford, because they're also being asked to help with reconstruction in Lebanon, in Syria. They see Yemen maybe in a longer term vision, not yet, but still out there. And the reality is, even for them, wealthy though they may be, there's a big cost here that would frankly swamp even them. And so there's going to be required a lot of international support, not just Gulf support. And it's not clear the international community is there yet.
Jonathan Panikoff, he is the director of the Middle East program at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C., and a former U.S. intelligence officer as well. Wonderful to have all your expertise and your insights today, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you.